To begin my Fire Emblem Awakening Lunatic Plus playthrough, I create my customizable avatar character. I create a female avatar with a default name and appearance. However, I choose to express my individuality by using slightly angrier eyes. For my character build, I choose to set my asset to speed and my flaw to skill. Lunatic Plus is a difficulty setting unlocked after beating the game on Lunatic. Enemies will have identical stats to Lunatic mode, but will also randomly have 2 out of 7 powerful skills, namely Pass, Vantage Plus, Luna Plus, Hawkeye, Pavise Plus, Aegis Plus, and Counter. Certain combinations of these skills on specific enemies can result in some of the early chapters being extremely difficult or impossible to complete reliably. The game opens with a flash forward where Chrom and Robin fight Valadar, eventually resulting in a short tutorial chapter and a public service announcement on why you shouldn't make a suspicious hobo dressed like a cultist into a high-ranking member of your nation's military. The prologue of this Lunatic Plus playthrough begins with Chrom making a suspicious hobo dressed like a cultist into a high-ranking member of his nation's military. In Lunatic Plus difficulty, the early chapters are exceedingly difficult and you need every edge you can get. Frederick can fight enemies reasonably well, but this won't last forever, meaning it is critically important that you level up Robin as much as possible. Unlike many other classes, Lords and Tacticians are capable of walking on water, meaning you can go into the river so that the enemies cannot attack you in melee range. This allows you to safely chip away at them with Robin's Thunder Tome and feed all of the XP into your avatar. The singular enemy mage can be dealt with by repeatedly shuffling out of his range and using Lissa to heal. I accidentally messed up one attempt and die, but in my second try, I cleared the enemies and get some very impressive level ups. The boss unfortunately has the gamble skill and a low percent chance to critical and kill anyone on my team, so I just had to clench my teeth and hope I get lucky. Fortunately, I do. Chapter 1 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough begins with Chrom's motley crew hunting a fucking bear off screen and consuming its flesh for sustenance. This chapter has numerous strong enemies on an open plain, making it very easy to get overwhelmed and killed. There's one fighter with a hammer who can one-shot Frederick, and he has Hawkeye and Luna Plus for his randomized skills. This actually is not the worst setup. If he had Vantage Plus, for example, this map will be a lot harder. I execute my strategy, which involves killing or stripping as many enemies as I can before the hammer fighter and boss close in. I get very lucky with a dual guard and a dual strike, resulting in 2 enemies dead and several saved actions. This allows me to safely chip the hammer fighter with Virion and finish him off with Fred. To facilitate the process of feeding more kills to Robin safely, I break the boss's weapon with Frederick's face. I make it out of the chapter on my first try with no casualties. Chapter 2 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough lays bare the blatant cronyism entrenched in Elysian academia. Despite being illiterate and lacking object permanence, Vake's connections of royalty have landed him a tenure track position. This map, once again, has you using pre-deployed liabilities against powerful enemies on an open plane. If too many enemies on this map have Luna Plus, your situation is more or less hopeless. I failed the map twice, but my third try goes a lot better. I attack the right flank, bracing for impacts from the left, and benefit from a lucky dual guard. However, I misclick and Muriel departs to do postdoctoral research 6 feet underneath the ground. Her sacrifice, however, ensures that I am able to clear the first group cleanly. I send Frederick out alone to fight the remaining enemies and divert some attention by walking Robin into the river. With this map's completion, I have finally unlocked the preparation screen and the glorious privilege of fighting enemies with counter. No! In Chapter 3 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, my typical strategy of dealing damage to enemies is hard countered. Enemies with counter will reflect damage from one range as long as they survive, meaning that many of your characters will die if they retaliate. This becomes especially problematic if you get unlucky with the enemy skill distributions. Fortunately, you can reroll the enemy's skills by exiting and re-entering the map, and I'm forced to do this many times. I fight the pack of enemies from the left and then the ones from the right, resulting in Sully and Virion's deaths. This map has a choke point at the doors, but is not very exploitable. Enemies can now move out of the way for other enemies, meaning you can't just get one guy stuck at the door. I also only have single-digit tome uses left, since Muriel's Fire Tome was lost when she died. I managed to successfully peel away the enemy archers with Frederick, meaning I can fight the rest of the enemies one at a time. Finally, after 2.5 hours and on my 9th attempt, I defeat the boss. I'm almost out of the hard part of Lunatic Plus now. my options will soon greatly expand. In Chapter 4 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, we enter Renown, where we go through an incredibly common scenario of needing to fight your time-traveling child in disguise as part of a proxy battle for a regional conflict. Hell, happened to me last Tuesday. At the start of the chapter, we can now access some shops and the Renown rewards. I buy some tonics, a new Thunder Tome, and get some nice bonuses such as the Glass Sword, Second Seal, and Energy Drop. My Robin is strong enough that when paired with Lissa, she is able to one-round several enemies on the map with thunder. I aggressively attack and bait the enemies, and on my 5th attempt, I make it through with no deaths. With the chapter's end, I now have access to a plethora of wireless features, such as DLC and the barracks. However, since I am playing on an emulator, I sadly do not have access to Spot Pass or the bonus box. In Paralog 1 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, Crom's posse goes to a nearby village to conscript a child soldier into his army. In this map, you must train Donald to level 2, or otherwise he will leave to go live on a farm. This statement, unlike many others I've made, is very literal and not a weird euphemism for being killed. After resetting a couple of times, I eventually work out a strategy. Some of the enemies have weird linked AI that can generally be fought individually after clearing the first group. In the final successful attempt, Vake and some other guy die, which is absolutely not worth it, but I'm not going to reset over it. I trained Donald to level 2 by having him poke a trapped archer who has counter. Fortunately, Donald only deals 1 damage per attack, ensuring his survival. In Chapter 5 of the Lunatic Plus playthrough, I abandoned all pretense of playing this game normally and used DLC. I find out that Marth from DLC episode number 1, Xenolog, Champions of Year 1, can also use the falchion. So I replaced Crom with Marth. I'd spend some time grinding gold in the Golden Gaff DLC and replaced my pathetically weak roster with overpowered DLC characters. The chapter begins with Gangrel, King of Plegia, callously sacrificing a soldier to obtain Casus Belli so he can declare war under the false pretense of self-defense. Truly a man ahead of his times. I go in with an army of otherworldly ghost soldiers and still end up resetting 11 times because characters kept dying when using auto battle. A true testament to my skills in strategy RPGs. In Chapter 6 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, I am forced to lean heavily on lampooning the story because the gameplay has become really boring. We open with a cutscene where Marth and an imposter pretending to be Marth defeat 2 assassins, resulting in fake Marth's identity being exposed to Marth. In this chapter, we recruit Gaius, a man whose entire personality is having a crippling addiction to candy. We also recruit Pan, whose race has been hunted to extinction because every Fire Emblem kingdom has an insatiable need for bunny ears for use in their spring festival costumes. Some unlucky Taguel are even kept alive using dark necromantic magics.
Look at the pain in its eyes!
The map's objectives are to rout the enemy and defend Emerald, tasks made incredibly easy by playing the game as if it were Fire Emblem Heroes. In Chapter 7 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, I spent 100,000 gold to purchase a capped out Robin from my other save file using the Avatar Logbook. This particular Robin has been specifically equipped to destroy everything in Lunatic Plus. She has Soul, Havize, and Aegis for survivability, Limit Breaker for +10 in every stat, and Armster to make weapons last forever. I also have a variety of other skills including Gale Force that I can swap in and out. Even without Nosferatu, I will be able to mercilessly slaughter everything in my way. And while it is technically possible to die if I get really unlucky with enemies that have counter, I don't expect it to happen. The total amount of gameplay in the chapter amounts to around 5 minutes of waiting on enemy phase. I make it sound like this is something incredible, but this is actually just typical Fire Emblem Awakening gameplay. In Chapter 8 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, I have nothing interesting to say. In Chapter 9 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, Emerald, the Exalt Elise, is held captive. The reason for this is a contrived plot to obtain the Fire Emblem trademark copyright that probably makes some sense thematically but not logically. I kill everything on the map and then find that my plan of sending in battlecopters to rescue Emerald is thwarted by Plegian anti-air hidden in the fog of war. Having lost a ton of units, Emerald's CO power gauge is now charged, and she uses her super CO power, Swan Dive. This grants her units a +10% buff to their attack and defense, and also accelerates her body towards the ground at a rate of 9.81 meters per second squared. In Chapter 10 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, I finally get to use the air horn remix that I made of Don't Speak Her Name. By doing this, I turn an otherwise iconic and emotional scene into dark comedy, as is tradition. Clearly, just like my taste in video games, my comedy is also quite dated. The objective of the map is to defeat the boss, and the Plegian soldiers clearly no longer want to fight. However, hearing the MLG choir from the heavens, they all know in their hearts what their fate is. Mustafa, popularly known as that bad axe unit in Fire Emblem Heroes, asks us to spare his men. So it goes without saying that I am contractually obligated to
kill every last one of them!
In Chapter 11 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, we kill Grand Girl and then have a short time skip. In the lead up to this, I have made preparations to get Crom to marry the generic villager maiden, which is only possible if his other marriage candidates are unavailable. Since Sully, Sumia, and Maribel fell in battle, I married Robin off to Frederick to eliminate that as a possibility as well. As long as I ensure that Crom has no contact with Olivia, Crom should be able to tie the knot with store brand thread. However, in a horrifying turn of events, Crom's holy blood compels him to make a different choice. Those cursed with major Orson blood have unusual preferences. He opts to marry Sumia, a clumsy pie-baking seductress, who more importantly, is dead.
No! No! That's not right! That ain't right! She's fucking dead!
In chapters 12 through 20 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, I fast forward through all 9 chapters of the Valm arc because they have no bearing on the rest of the story. We find out that the successors of King Alm and Queen Celica of Old Valentia are not monarchs, but rather an American multinational retail corporation that operates a large selection of department stores throughout all of Valentia, Arcanea, and the United States of America. Blatantly ripping off Persona 4, we spend most of these chapters with our main cast hanging out at Walmart. With the support of local flower merchants and a clan of red-haired paramilitary arms dealers, we defeat the monopolistic menace by brutally murdering the Ascended God King CEO, Volhart Walmartson, with an extra-dimensional ghost assassin. Yeah, I don't get it either. This is kind of stupid. In Chapter 21 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, Robin and Crom come home from shopping at Walmart into an incredibly obvious trap that they escape from by killing 100 people. In a true reference to old Fire Emblem, Valadar uses a plot contrivance to mind control Robin into handing over the Fire Emblem. They don't tell you this, but at this exact moment, there's like 5 secret plans going on in the background for a dramatic reveal later in the story that still ends up not really mattering at all. Speaking of secret plans, right after completing Chapter 20, I actually spent an hour training DLC Mark into a Super Saiyan by grinding DLC. This, unlike the things that happen in the story, will have an impact in the future. In Chapter 22 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, I need to talk a lot slower because there's no plot and the whole map, cutscenes and all, take around 5 minutes in total. A long line of Grima simps walk towards the dragon's table to be sacrificed, and we are intercepted by Aversa and the 12 Dead Lords, which is a reference to Fire Emblem 4 and 5. I defeat them, or more accurately, I fight exactly 1 Dead Lord, and then activate Gale Force for a bonus action, and finish the chapter in 1 turn by defeating the boss. Despite being defeated, Aversa states that she cannot fall here, so she decides to make her retreat. In Chapter 23 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, we discover that Valadar descends from a long line of Tier 3 subs for Grima's Twitch channel. The real protagonists of the story, Avatar Logbook Robin and DLC Mark, kill everything on the bottom of the map, while the side characters Robin and Crom fight Valadar alone. After defeating him, a recycled cutscene plays, where Robin rearranges Crom's internal organs with a glow stick. However, it is soon revealed that this was all a ruse, conducted purely off-screen for the benefit of the game's themes as opposed to its narrative. After a brief intermission, Valadar is once again defeated, ending a long chain of multi-generational simpery, and completely preventing the revival of the fell dragon. What's that? Grima shows up anyway? Okay. In Chapter 24 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, we perform the
Awakening
ritual to fulfill our
fates
to defeat the
Shadow Dragon
with the
Blade of Light
I don't plan on playing any more
Gaiden
chapters, so the series will go on to a swift conclusion. Robin decides to deny her
genealogy
by going on a
Holy War
for her
Path of Radiance
to reach her.
Radiant Dawn
With this, I will have obtained 2 falchions,
the Blazing Blade
and
the Binding Blade
which will be crucial in solving the.
new mystery of the emblem
Soon, we will become
Fire Emblem Heroes
by punching Grima in,
the Sacred Stones
banishing him to.
Thracia 776
Yeah, the last one's a bit of a stretch. In Chapter 25 of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, enemies have finally scaled up enough to actually be able to deal damage to me. I buy and forge a waste tome, which is thematically appropriate since the last couple of chapters have been a waste of time. It also has a brave effect, which is great because that will also allow for additional pair-up attacks, which will ignore enemy damage reduction skills. Confident in my invincibility, I equip my forged waste tome and am proven very, very wrong. I get wasted 3 times in a row by enemies with counter, proving that there are no real options aside from using Nosferatu. After defeating Aversa, we proceed to the final battle. Naga graciously teleports everyone onto Grima's back, under the assumption that a simple barrel roll won't send everyone careening to their deaths. In the final chapter of this Lunatic Plus playthrough, I beat the game without needing to lie about it or silence my critics. All of the footage was recorded live, and the VODs are linked below in the playlist if you would like to confirm the authenticity of this run. I speed towards the boss on turn 1 using a dance and a Gale Force activation to attack Grima on the first turn. This strategy is fairly straightforward and doesn't even require me to take down all of my social media to escape the haters. Avatar Logbook Robin is equipped with a Forged Waste Tome and DLC Mark has the Exalted Falchion, so I will attack 4 times and potentially trigger 4 dual strikes that ignore damage reduction. With this, Grima is easily slain, even without me needing to enact an elaborate disinformation campaign to discredit my doubters. As it turns out, all it really takes to beat Fire Emblem Awakening on Lunatic Plus difficulty is to use a strategy that's arguably even less impressive than making all of it up. This concludes my Lunatic Plus playthrough of Fire Emblem Awakening. The game was quite challenging and interesting up until around Chapter 4, after which it got a bit too difficult for me and I decided to just steamroll it and get it over with. While I still had a good time overall, clowning on the story and making shitpost airhorn remixes, it wasn't nearly as fun to break this game compared to Fire Emblem 11 and 12, mostly because trivializing Awakening is in itself trivial. Anyway, if you like this series, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, following me on Twitter, or donating to my Patreon. Thanks for watching, and please look forward to my future projects. See you next time.